Senator, we are all very glad you're feeling well, as you just said. But there is a question on a lot of people's minds, and I want to address it tonight. You're 78 years old, and you just had a heart attack. How do you reassure Democratic voters that you're up to the stress of the presidency?
Well, let me invite you all to a major rally we're having in Queens, New York, BernieSanders.com. We're going to have a special guest at that event, and we are going to be mounting a vigorous campaign all over this country. That is how I think I can reassure the American people. But let me take this moment, if I might, to thank so many people from all over this country, including many of my colleagues up here, for their love, for their prayers, for their well wishes. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I'm so happy to be back here with you this evening.
Vice President Biden, if you're elected, you will turn 80 during your first term. Last month, former President Jimmy Carter said he could not have undertaken the duties of the presidency at 80 years old. Why are you so sure that you can?
Because I've watched it. I know what the job is. I've been engaged. Look, one of the reasons I am running is because of my age and my experience. With it comes wisdom. We need someone to take office this time around who on day one can stand on the world stage, command the respect of world leaders from Putin to our allies, and know exactly what has to be done to get this country back on track. It is required now more than any time in any of our lifetimes to have someone who has that capacity on day one. That's one of the reasons why I decided to run. Why I decided to run this time, because I know what has to be done. I've done it before. I've been there when we pulled the nation out of the worst financial recession in history. I've been there, and I've got so many pieces of legislation passed, including the Affordable Care Act, as well as making sure that we had the Recovery Act, which kept us from going into depression. I know what has to be done. I will not need any on-the-job training the day I take office. And I will release my medical records, as I have 21 years of my tax record, which no one else on this stage has done, so that you can have full transparency as to my health and what I am doing.
Just to be clear, Mr. Vice President, when will you release those records?
Before the first vote.
Before Iowa?
Yes.
Not by the end of this year?
Well, before Iowa. I mean, look, I've released them before. I mean, I've released 55 pages of mine. I'm the only guy that's released anything up here.
Senator Warren, like Senator Sanders and Vice President Biden, if you win the presidency, you would be the oldest president ever inaugurated in a first term. You would be 71. 40% of Democratic primary voters say they think a candidate under the age of 70 is more likely to defeat President Trump. What do you say to them?
Well, I say I will outwork, outorganize, and outlast anyone, and that includes Donald Trump, Mike Pence, or whoever the Republicans get stuck with. Look, the way I see this, the way we're going to win is by addressing head-on what millions of Americans know in their bones, and that is that the wealthy and the well-connected have captured our democracy, and they're making it work for themselves and leaving everyone else behind. And political pundits and Washington insiders and people in our own party don't want to admit that. They think that running some kind of vague campaign that nibbles around the edges of big problems in this country is a winning strategy. They are wrong. If all Democrats can promise is after Donald Trump it will be business as usual, then we will lose. Democrats win when we call out what's broken and we show how to fix it. Democrats will win when we fight for the things that touch people's lives, things like child care and health care and housing costs. Democrats will win when we give people a reason to get in the fight.
Congresswoman Gabbard, you're 38 years old, and you would be the youngest president if elected. Should age matter when choosing a president?
I'm glad you asked, because I was going to say it's not fair to ask these three about their health and their fitness to serve as president, but not every other one of us. I am grateful to have been trained very well by the Army and do my best to stay in shape. But here's the real question I believe you should be asking is, who is fit to serve as our commander-in-chief? This is the most important responsibility that the president has. What Donald Trump has been doing in Syria and what we have just seen with him inviting the Turkey to come in and slaughter the Kurds show what an unfit president looks like. It highlights how critical it is that we have a president and commander-in-chief who is ready on day one, bringing experience and understanding in foreign policy and national security, bringing the experience that I have, both serving in Congress now for nearly 7 years, serving on the Foreign Affairs Committee, serving on the Armed Services Committee, subcommittees related to terrorism and upcoming threats, serving on the Homeland Security Committee, the experience that I have as a soldier, serving for over 16 years in the Army National Guard, deploying twice to the Middle East, being able to serve in different capacities, joint training exercises, training the Kuwait National Guard. I understand the importance of our national security. I am prepared to do this job, to fulfill this responsibility as Commander-in-Chief on day one. I'd like to ask our other candidates this question. I'd like to start with Senator Warren. What her experience and background is.
I'm sorry, thank you. We're going to take another break now. The CNN New York Times debate live from Otterbein University here in Ohio. We'll be back in just a few moments.